This chapter just accelerates everything. We see Sitong humming as a vital transport hub. Then Yunji's clever, almost entrepreneurial methods building Weishan, using pottery for trade and diplomacy, is brilliant. Meanwhile, Feather's team hits promising coal deposits, hinting at that industrial revolution. But Yu Yi's expedition takes a dark turn. The clash with the savage tribe is intense, and his long-term revenge plan is pure, calculated Han strategy, terrifyingly effective. Witnessing the MC immediately overseeing mass printing for education underscores the sheer scale and foresight. They're building infrastructure, exploiting resources, planning military retribution, and standardizing knowledge simultaneously. It feels like multiple crucial developments converging towards a major power surge. The contrast between Han progress and the other tribes' reactions, awe, hostility, is palpable. Those printing presses churning out knowledge while Yu Yi plots enslavement, the duality is astounding. That coal find feels like a lit fuse. That school in Luoyang County, you had to build it like a giant beast's lair for one dead simple reason. People. Lots of them. Several market districts plus the nearby villages amounted to a teeming mass of over 20,000 souls. And looking at the situation, they were only going to keep pumping out more kids in the future. Might as well go. All out in one go. Save yourself the headache of dealing with mud and wood when it came time to expand later. As for the other newly established counties, forget about it. The common folk hadn't even had more than a few days of stable life yet. Expect them to send their kids to school? Dream on. Besides, there wasn't even a shadow of a school yet, and teachers were even harder to scrape together. That matter could wait. So, for the Han tribe's very first school year, your goal was ambitious. 3 counties aiming to rope in at least 6,000 new students, 2,500 here in Hanyang City, and for the population-booming Luoyang County, you set a quota of 3,500. With more people over there was no fear of not meeting the target. Teaching staff? That was a serious weakness. You scraped the barrel and only managed to pull together about 100 cultured folks who could potentially serve as teachers. Based on 1 teacher per class, stuffing 60 little tykes into each, that came out to exactly 6,000. 1. More student and you couldn't have magicked up another teacher. Not enough teachers? Quick training to make up the shortfall. You borrowed some modern wisdom again. The Han tribe had only 2 main subjects: language arts, learning to speak and write; mathematics, learning to count and calculate. So, specialize. Those good at math would focus intensely on math, as long as they recognized characters. No need to waste time memorizing classical particles. Once trained, they'd only teach math, nothing else. The same principle applied to language arts teachers. With this setup, 1 teacher could handle 2 classes. Take Old Hu, for example. Excellent at language arts, but got a headache just looking at multiplication tables. Old Ju, sharp as a tack with arithmetic, but his writing was utter gibberish. All right then, you 2 team up. Old Hu teaches language arts for Class 1 and Class 2. Old Ju teaches math for Class 1 and Class 2. Each handles discipline for 1 class. Perfect. Modern teachers emphasize well-rounded development? Ha! Special circumstances called for emergency measures. This method could churn out a batch of qualified instructors in the shortest possible time. Efficiency, as for how to get them. Comfortable at the lectern. You didn't have time for hand-holding, let them manage themselves. You set up an upgraded version of students managing students, teachers managing teachers. As long as the rules were set, human beings, as creatures, could manage themselves just fine. You strolled over to the top floor of teaching building. 2. All 6 classrooms were bustling with activity. On one side were the future math teachers, on the other, the future language arts teachers. Someone was lecturing animatedly at the front, words flying, while below, others were scribbling. Furiously, you peeked in from the doorway, listening for a bit. A math teacher was using chalk and a ruler to draw geometric shapes on the blackboard, annotated with formulas like celestial script. He explained a textbook example thoroughly, finished, then swish, 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 wrote problems on the board, for those below to solve. After they were done, he picked out the incorrect problems, broke them down meticulously, and even called on individuals. The people below cooperated well, hands shooting up all at once. Once this problem was explained, the teacher at the front immediately sat back down among the students. Then, another person sprang up from below, transformed into the teacher, and started explaining a new problem. That's right, they were both students and teachers. Taking turns at the front, nobody got to hide. What was this training? Courage, eloquence, blackboard writing, how to use the teaching aids, and getting a feel for the sacred atmosphere of teaching beforehand. Otherwise, when the time came, facing dozens of pairs of bright, staring little eyes, if you got nervous and couldn't even speak clearly, wouldn't that be a disaster? The math side looked pretty decent, and the language arts side looked even more the part. After all, this was how you had indoctrinated them initially. They just needed to copy the model. And that book, Han writes, crucial. It taught the rules. Etiquette for all ranks. Sacrificial procedures. These had to be promoted. Otherwise, as the population grew, sooner or later, things would descend into chaos. Only by establishing these rules could your rule be stable. You were also sneakily pushing a core concept learned from the ancestors, defining Han, not by bloodline, not by surname, but by culture. Wear the same clothes, speak the same language, live the same way. Then you are Han. In the short term, this move was simply a stroke of genius for tribal expansion and uniting the people. Makes sense when you think about it. How many in your Han tribe were actually native-born? Most were clans brought over lock, stock, and barrel. Could you say those who joined later weren't part of the same people? That would be like destroying your own defenses from within. So, as long as they identified with this culture, they were one of us. Even if they weren't originally, even if they couldn't speak the Han language, teach them, and they were. Culture defines the nation. That was the essence of how the name China had endured for millennia. After checking things over, books were in place, teachers were thriving amidst mutual competition. Everything was in order. You relaxed and turned towards the nearby government office building. Time to summon those in charge and assign this year's conscription. Enrollment task. Compulsory education. Mandatory enrollment. The official document in triplicate was dispatched to Hanyang City, Ruyang City, and Liuyang County. All subjects of the Han tribe with children between the ages of 7 and 13, regardless of gender, must attend school. Report to the school on the 28th day of the 8th month. For class assignment. To receive books. Those with special circumstances must report immediately to the government office for verification. Parents must cooperate. Prepare school supplies and water containers for your children. Ensure they are neatly dressed. Shirts, pants, shoes, socks, none may be missing. Tuition and book fees are waived. Stationery must be brought from home or purchased at school. Those who dare refuse to send their children to school without valid reason, the parents shall be deemed guilty, subject to a fine of 500, and sentenced to 2 months of labor service. On the 2nd day of the 8th month, this earth-shattering announcement, as if it had grown legs, was posted all over the 3 locations. School entrances, inside and outside city gates, government office walls, busy intersections, beside wells, everywhere. Beside them stood clerks or temporary workers, shouting themselves hoarse, explaining it to the onlookers. As soon as the news broke, it caused an uproar throughout half the Han tribe. In less than a day, everyone in the city knew. Zhang San's Isa family rushed over to Li Si's. Wang Wu's family sought out Zhao Liu's. Tongues wagging, discussions erupted everywhere. Was this ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Nobody was quite sure. School? What the heck is that? Conscripting little kids for labor, what can they even do? And we have to prepare this and that. Some simple, honest farmers hadn't wrapped their heads around it at all, thinking it was the government conscripting labor again, muttering to themselves, why recruit kids? They don't have the strength to haul bricks or logs. It's not labor, yelled the clerk responsible for explaining. his voice nearly hoarse. It's going to school, to study, to learn characters, to write. Understand? Oh. The farmer dragged out the sound, seeming to half understand, his face still blank. Everyone has to go, boys and girls? Someone else in the crowd asked. Where do we go? Is it far? Yes, all eligible children must go. Whichever family doesn't send them, the parents, are guilty. Fined. Forced labor, the clerk stated unequivocally. Location? Those tall new buildings next to the county government office. That's the school. They can come home every day, drop them off in the morning, pick them up in the evening. But right now it was late summer, early autumn, a busy time. The recently harvested corn wasn't dried and threshed yet, and the newly planted corn sprouts were just poking through. At home, there was husking corn, feeding chickens, herding, sheep tending the fire, cutting pig feed. Older kids, 11 or 12, were proper laborers, and even 8 or 9-year-olds could help out quite a bit. Send them off to this school thing? What was the use? Wasn't this just interfering with work at home? Many people started scheming privately. Immediately, a clever fellow's eyes darted about, thinking he could bluff his way through. Sir, my kid burned his foot a few days ago, can't walk. This school thing. Guess he doesn't have to go, right? The clerk shot him a sideways glance, knowing exactly what he was up to. The leaders had anticipated this kind of situation during meetings. He even had the counter-strategy memorized. Oh? Burned his foot? Simple. Bring your household register, take the kid, and go to the government office to get official certification. Just hand it in during enrollment. He paused, his tone taking on a threatening edge. But let me be blunt. If you dare conceal or falsify information, that's defying orders. A fine of $500. You and your wife prepare for 2 months. Labor service. Think it over carefully. What? Have to go to the government office for certification? The would-be clever fellow was instantly dumbfounded. What did you expect? The clerk said coolly. Are you going to get the certificate or not? Think carefully before you answer. We won't go. The man instantly deflated, hastily backtracking. He got burned a little while back, I reckon. He'll be all better by the end of the month. I'll definitely send him then. If he pushed it further, and they actually came to check, the lie would be exposed. Fines plus labor service. A huge loss. The clerk just grunted and didn't pursue it further. Pointing it out would make everyone lose face. Others in the crowd, who had been thinking of excuses, immediately wilted when they heard about needing certification from the government office. Then, the clerk switched to a tone of earnest persuasion. Let me tell you, this schooling isn't for the tribe. It isn't for the government. It's for your own kids. Once they learn to read, write, and do arithmetic, even if they don't become a clerk like me after graduating, they could become skilled artisans. That's better than farming, right? Those who study well might even snag a title, get rewarded. Even if they don't become any kind of official later on, doing business, buying things in the market, knowing how to calculate, they won't get cheated, right? Hearing this, the crowd thought, that made some sense. Quite a few benefits. Some people's minds started turning. Sir, someone else asked, this schooling, how long does it last? Well, the clerk estimated, at least 2 or 3 years, I'd say. What? That long? Another stir went through the crowd. Hey, let me finish. The clerk quickly calmed the crowd. Yes, it takes a few years, but the kids come home every day. Plus, they get 2 days off every 5 days. And during the hottest part of summer and the coldest part of winter, there are long holidays, several months off at a time. It won't interfere too much with your work. Hearing this, everyone breathed another sigh of relief. During the holidays, the kids could still come home and help out with chores. All right, looks like this schooling was unavoidable. Better hurry up and prepare things then, especially clothes. The announcement said they must be neatly dressed. Lots of kids ran around bare-chested in shorts at home during summer, but that wouldn't do now. Got to quickly get some cloth and make new outfits. Luckily, there was still a month. Enough time. and something to drink from. Bamboo tubes, pottery jars, everyone showed their ingenuity. Someone sniffed out a business opportunity in this, specially, made a batch of bamboo water bottles, and took them everywhere to sell. Hey, they actually sold like hotcakes. It was all because of this school business. Carrying a bowl or a pottery jug was heavy and inconvenient. Bamboo water bottles, light and sturdy, practically essential gear for students. This blasted compulsory education had actually stimulated domestic demand unexpectedly. This matter of schooling, like water dropped into boiling oil, continued to cause an uproar across the 3 counties. Those little tykes, soon to be the chosen ones, also got excited, gathering in groups of 3s and 5s, chattering away, their main activities being pinned down by their parents for a forceful scrubbing, being grabbed by their parents to be measured for new school clothes, struggling desperately to escape their parents' clutches to run wild outside, forming groups to go gaze upon the brand new school buildings, their future cage. Of course, some scenes were more conventional. For instance, children whose parents worked in the workshops or government offices deeply understood the truth that knowledge changes destiny. Learning skills meant better jobs in the future, becoming an official, a clerk, or a top-notch artisan. Even if they ended up farming or raising pigs back home, it was better than being illiterate. In short, they held one belief: following you, the chief, and learning skills offered a better future than others, making achieving merit and earning titles not just a dream. What were noble titles? They were hard currency in the Han tribe. They meant more land, more money, more privileges, a better life. These families placed great hopes on their children. Their parents had relied on learning a few characters from you back then to reach their current status. So naturally, they valued this opportunity for schooling more than their own lives. Those farmers who didn't quite understand what schooling was weren't truly foolish either. They weren't sure exactly what would be taught, but they knew it definitely involved learning to read and write. And what was the situation in the tribe now? Anyone who could write was treated like treasure by you, the chief. The ranks of officials and clerks were full of them. If their own kid learned to write, hey, maybe their ancestors would smile down on them, and they too could produce someone wearing official robes and a cap. Their thinking wasn't wrong. After all, your formal education system was just beginning. The first batch of products would absolutely be hot commodities. Injecting literate people into every trade and industry would certainly lead to better performance. Their logic was sound. Thus, under the earnest guidance and fervent expectations of their parents, many unruly kids began to take the matter of schooling seriously. What got them even more fired up was a rumor circulating in the tribe. The knowledge and skills taught in the school were personally passed down by you, the chief. Who were you? In the eyes of the common people, you were no longer just human. You were a god, the ultimate idol in the hearts of countless youths. Think about it. A boy about their age, at most a year or two older, had led the tribe on a meteoric rise since his early teens, developing it to its current state. This was simply a living legend, pure personal adoration. Your charisma was deeply imprinted in their hearts. You were their spiritual leader. Now they had been chosen for school, starting to learn knowledge personally passed down by you at roughly the same age you were when you started. What did this mean? It meant getting one step closer to their idol. How could they not be excited? And at this moment, you were sitting in a large classroom, holding a meeting with the 100 or so future engineers of the soul below. The agenda: assigning personnel. Which unlucky ones would stay in Hanyang City? Which lucky ones would be dispatched to Liuyang County? Also, how to divide the thousands of incoming brats into classes. Everyone listen up, take notes. You cleared your throat. The purpose of our schools is to cultivate talent for the tribe. The more, the better. So how can we achieve this goal faster, better, and more efficiently? You all know, this enrollment spans a wide age range, 7 to 12 years old, all lumped together. For the younger ones, 7 or 8 years old, you teach them step by step slowly. But those nearing adulthood, 11 or 12, They'll soon be entering society to join the workforce. We can't keep a large chunk of our labor force cooped up in school for too long. That affects the tribe's development. Therefore, class division, it must be done by age. Let's start with the young ones. 7 to 8 years old, put them in one tier. Divide them evenly into classes based on the total number, 60 per class, keeping the gender ratio as balanced as possible. No creating all boys or all girls. Classes. 9 to 10 years old, handle them the same way. For these two groups, build their foundation from scratch. Follow the teaching syllabus, one step at a time. No need to rush, but you must teach them well. I'm counting on them becoming capable individuals in a few years. The rest are the older youth group, 10, 11, and 12 years old. These three batches, group them by the same age. They are about to enter society, so they must be treated differently. Fast-track education. Elites? Not expecting that for now. You waved your hand. For them, my main requirement is 2 words: literacy. Especially the 12-year-old batch. Listen carefully. Poetry, songs, complex etiquette can be eased up on, but you must instill correct social values in them. Teach them basic human morality. The most crucial point: they must learn to read and write Han characters. This is the absolute bottom line. Math, teach it normally. I don't require everyone to become a mathematician, but you must identify the promising talents for me and cultivate them specifically. There's also a key part. For the 12-year-old batch, allocate 25% of their class time to interest-based education. What does that mean? It means every day, either in the morning or afternoon. Take out half a day for them to attend interest activity. Classes. Learn experience, learn skills, targeted training. For example, someone likes math. Ask him what he wants to do. Join the government office as an accountant or go to the workshop as an artisan. Wants to be an artisan? Fine. Every day, take half a day. Organize these like-minded individuals. Send them to the workshops to observe, learn, and intern. Start as apprentices. Let them apply the knowledge learned in class, aiming for them to be ready for work directly after. A year. Like farming and animal husbandry? No problem, we have natural science class. Organize those interested. And during activity time, take them to the breeding farms for internships. Learn techniques hands-on. See if they can use their learned knowledge to innovate. During busy farming seasons, they can observe crop growth, discuss how to increase yield, how to improve efficiency. All this can be done. Same for the girls. Your gaze swept over the female teachers present. You need to pay even more attention to the girls' futures. Learn weaving, tailoring, or farming and husbandry. Support the exceptionally talented ones to stay in school and become teachers. This point applies to boys, too. You are the first batch of teachers, but definitely not the last. The teaching staff will only grow larger, so you also need to put more thought into your successors. The remaining 10 and 11-year-olds, similar approach. The younger they are, the more emphasis on well-rounded development. But interest, activity classes must also be included, though perhaps with fewer hours. For example, 10-year-olds, 1 activity class per week, 1 afternoon. 11-year-olds twice a week or every other day. When they advance to 12, increase it to once a day. Build a foundation for their future careers and families. One last point, very important. Your tone became serious. Older students are allowed to date, but no fooling around. Anyone who tastes the forbidden fruit before graduation will be directly convicted. I'll kill them. Coercion is absolutely forbidden. Want to get married and have children? Wait until after graduation, after becoming adults, after the government office issues household registers, allocates land and property, and grants marriage certificates. Remember this bottom line. Having children too young is dangerous, life-threatening. You must warn them repeatedly. All right, that's all for now. Did you all get that down? You tossed the chalk aside, looking around at the crowd. You had written some keywords on the blackboard. Below the platform, the 100+ teachers simultaneously stopped writing, their papers already densely covered. Got it. Understood. That's it, meeting adjourned. You stood up. Go back and properly digest today's content. You'll be starting your posts soon. I hope everyone works hard and cultivates more talent for our Han tribe. You offered a few words of encouragement and waved dismissively. The teachers hurriedly stood up, bowed with hands clasped, and respectfully saw you off. Once the meeting dispersed, the teachers began to move. Those staying in Hanyang City remained on standby. Those assigned to Luoyang County had to set off now, which also meant moving house. Fortunately, houses were ready, allowing them to move right in. The main thing was to familiarize themselves with the school environment there first. You returned home to find your first wife, Xiao Die, and second wife, Zhan Ying, also busy. Although both were pregnant, they weren't far along, so it didn't hinder their activities. These past few days you had given them a task, teaching the women in the city how to make school bags. You provided the designs, 2 types. One was a simple and practical single-strap shoulder bag. The other was a rectangular cloth sack with 2 strings threaded crosswise through the opening. The ends of the strings were sewn to the bottom 2 corners of the sack. Pulling the strings tightened the opening, creating a simple drawstring backpack. This was the kind of portable little bag popular in schools during your childhood. Couldn't hold many books, but its advantage was simple construction, requiring no zippers or metal buckles, making it easy to hand sew. The design and instructions had already been spread. Whether the common folk used them, how they used them, or whether someone would come up with an improved version, that wasn't your concern. Perhaps some families were reluctant to use the cloth, but in the current Han tribe, people weren't so poor they couldn't afford a piece of cloth. It was more a question of willingness. Time slipped away amidst these busy preparations, and the 8th month was soon half over. The shipyard in Luoyang County launched 3 new sailboats. Yu Ye's fleet received 2. He was now specialized in surveying the Great Marsh, using large boats less frequently. Small boats and bamboo rafts saw more action, with the large boats becoming mobile supply stations. So, with a wave of your hand, you allocated all 3 new ships to Jingyan and Yumao for transporting supplies and equipment for coal mine development. Adding the one they had before, they now had 4 large sailboats shuttling back and forth between Luoyang County and the Lu tribe, transporting equipment, supplies, and personnel. Meanwhile, Yu Fu's fleet, having left the barbarian tribe and continued exploring downstream, encountered a much wider world. The previously discovered barbarian tribe was located in a flat, fertile area near the river and forest, a good place for farming and herding. But after continuing downstream for several more days, the high mountains became fewer, replaced mostly by low hills. Stone mountains almost disappeared. Even the existing mountains were earth mounds covered in dense vegetation. The plains became vaster, the river gentler and wider, generally around 300 meters across. The wildlife here was also more numerous and larger. Terror birds ran everywhere, elephants and rhinos were commonly seen, and wild cattle, horses, and antelope moved in herds. Correspondingly, the predators were also fierce. Wolf packs, leopards, saber-toothed tigers in groups of 3 to 5, manaless cave lions, bears in the forests. There were also vegetarian giant tapirs, leaping monkeys, and plenty of smaller creatures like foxes and rabbits. Yu Fu, who spent years out exploring, concluded this place was a superplain, rivaling the western grasslands, possibly even larger. Its location was likely east of the grasslands' Great Lake, facing the grasslands across the water. The resource situation was unknown. Judging solely by the terrain, this plain was more suitable for development than the mountainous region you currently occupied. Of course, there were plenty of humans here too. Abundant animals meant ample food. Although dangerous beasts were also numerous, ever since humans learned to use fire and make tools and weapons, few animals were truly their match. So it was only natural that Yu Fu also encountered large human tribes here. After leaving the territory of the barbarian tribe, Yu Fu's fleet continued meandering southwest down the Great River. On the 10th day of the 8th month, after passing through a gorge, the view suddenly opened up. A vast plain stretching beyond the horizon. In this section of the river, The current was remarkably gentle, almost like a lazy, overweight fellow, without a single rapid. For your Han tribe's water transport, this was practically a gift from the heavens. However, trying to harness this river for hydroelectric power? Difficult. Power generation relies on a drop in elevation. The faster the current, the better. This river was too placid. Truly, every advantage has its disadvantage. Having sailed for over a month, Yu Fu and his crew had gotten a good feel for the river's temperament. It was astonishingly wide, a full 400 meters. Moreover, there was absolutely no need to worry about the large ships running aground. The small boats scouting ahead had tested the depth with bamboo poles and never once touched the bottom. Yu Fu, skeptical, had his men tie an iron anchor to a rope and toss it into the river's center. Good grief. It sank straight down over a cow. 100 meters before hitting bottom. Even near the banks, it was dozens of meters deep. Large ships hitting bottom? Not a chance. Since the water was deep enough to host whales, there was no longer a need to deploy those tiny, one-man reconnaissance skiffs ahead. Yu Fu waved his hand, switching to a landing craft to lead the way. This boat was larger, could fit several people, allowing for chatter and banter along the way, preventing the navigator from going stir-crazy. Incidentally, it also relieved some pressure from the 3 large ships following behind, which were packed almost to bursting. The fleet originally consisted of about 200 people, with over 70 crammed onto each ship, already quite full. Later, they picked up the 80-odd members of the Li tribe, plus their precious herd of leopard cats. Well, now each ship was stuffed with over 100 people, truly shoulder to shoulder, cat to cat. Sending 20 men ahead to row the Yao. Small boat at least freed up some breathing room. It was under these overcrowded conditions that, on the morning of the 12th day of the 8th month, the unexpected happened. Today, the man in charge of rowing and leading the forward landing craft was Yu Fu's trusted subordinate, Yu Ji. He was shooting the breeze with a crewmate beside him when, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly spotted over a dozen human heads floating on the river ahead. All were bare-chested men. They were tightly clutching bulging animal skin bladders and carrying skin-wrapped bundles on their backs, the contents unclear. These men, one hand gripping the bladder, the other paddling furiously, were swimming. From the west bank towards the east, it looked like they were trying to cross this wide river, but their swimming skills varied greatly. A few swam quite well, but several youngsters were far behind, flailing helplessly in the water. They hadn't made much forward progress and were being swept downstream by the current, on the verge of being left behind. The others shouted anxiously, but the youths drifted further and further away. A strong man, seemingly the leader, who had almost reached the middle of the river, heard the cries for help from behind. Without hesitation, he turned around and swam back, intending to rescue the unlucky kid downstream. Among the others in the water, some also headed downstream to help, while others suddenly noticed, drifting slowly towards them from upstream, was a wooden boat, with dozens of people sitting on it. The sight nearly scared the souls out of them. Unfortunately, they couldn't jump out of the water, only stare wide-eyed as the behemoth approached. Some, still clutching their bladders, waved frantically and shouted towards those attempting the downstream rescue. Others waved and yelled at Yuji's boat, their expressions incredibly agitated. Though their words were gibberish and incomprehensible, the boat's crew mostly understood the meaning. "Brother Yuji, look at them. Seems like they're shouting. For help! Yeah, so, should we rescue them or not?" The crewmen on the small boat started discussing animatedly. Yuji squinted, assessed the situation, and made a swift decision. "Rescue. Of course we rescue. Look, they're all able-bodied young men, must be from a large tribe. If we save them, earn some goodwill, maybe we can establish contact, do some trading, find out about this place. Better than fumbling around blindly ourselves. This is a golden opportunity delivered right to our doorstep. Quick, row faster, pull them aboard. But stay alert, don't rescue a bunch of ingrates." "Aye, aye," the men roared in agreement, chanting rhythmically as 20 oars dipped into the water in unison. The small boat shot downstream like an arrow. Downstream, the leading strongman had already reached the youth. The boy's bladder had long been washed away, and he had swallowed a lot of water, clearly fading fast, semi-conscious, sinking stiffly. The leader quickly shoved his own bladder under the youth, supporting him. He then unslung the bundle from the boy's back and hung it around his own neck, before wrapping an arm around the boy's neck, trying to tow him towards the main group. But the youth was half unconscious, unable to paddle himself. The moment the leader loosened his grip slightly, the boy would sink. The leader could only tow him like a sack of potatoes. Luckily, he was unconscious. Otherwise, a drowning person's frantic grabbing and clinging might have dragged the leader down too. Even so, the situation was dire. The leader was carrying bundles for 2 people, heavy burdens, and now had to tow a half-dead person. The saying, dead weight, isn't baseless. The youth was nearly as heavy as a corpse now. Weighted down and towing someone, the leader, being a skilled swimmer himself, could still manage, but the youth clearly couldn't hold on much longer. They were still on the west side of the river, over 300 meters from the east bank. Towing him that far, even if they reached the shore, the boy would likely be dead. Going to the east bank was strenuous and potentially futile. Turning back to the west bank was only about 100 meters, maybe offering a chance for rescue, but doing so would separate them from the main group, delaying their mission. Just as the leader was torn, finally gritting his teeth and deciding to prioritize rescue and swim back towards the west bank, something in the water bit his leg viciously. "Ow!" the leader cried out in pain. Immediately after, his other foot was bitten too. The thing in the water clamped down hard. Intense pain made cold sweat break out. His treading water movements became erratic and both started sinking. The last remaining bladder was swept away. Just as they were about to become fish food, while the leader was flailing desperately to save himself, he suddenly heard rhythmic chanting, "Heave ho! Heave ho!" from upstream. Quite a few people, the rhythm neat like singing. Immediately after, a strangely shaped large vessel rushed towards them, packed with people. 20 wooden oars flashed, and the landing craft sped towards the leader and the youth. Some rowers immediately back-paddled to stabilize the boat, while others, quick-eyed and swift-handed, reached out and hauled the 2 men out of the water and onto the boat. As soon as the 2 were dragged aboard and dropped onto the deck, well, the whole crew stared dumbfounded. The unconscious youth's belly was swollen like a ball, clearly full of water. Worse, he was covered in injuries, several still bleeding, and 2 palm-sized flatfish were clamped tightly onto his leg, biting into the flesh. The leader beside him wasn't much better off. When pulled aboard, his back, arms, thighs, and feet had a total of 5 similar fish attached. They were also biting savagely, blood mixing with river water streaming down. "Quick, quick! Get the fish off!" You Jiang immediately yelled orders. "Careful, don't throw them away. These fish, they're delicious." The crewmen immediately fumbled for knives and daggers, carefully prying the fish mouths open, trying not to injure the men, removing the fish one by one. However, You Jiang quickly realized, "Hey, don't just focus on the fish, no one's minding." The boat. He hastily reassigned tasks. 2 people responsible for first aid, 1 each. Everyone else row. Go back and pull those others out of the water. There are man-eating fish in this water. If they stay in longer, they'll all get hurt. Yeah, quick, save them," one crewman joked while grabbing an oar. "It's bad enough if they bite your leg, but if they bite your bird, you're really screwed." The others roared with laughter at his words and immediately rowed hard, heading towards the other swimmers still struggling in the water. The leader, pulled onto the boat, saw clearly what had bitten him in the water, just these palm-sized flatfish. Furious, he grabbed one still latched onto his arm, yanked hard, tearing it off, and threw it back into the water. The action tore off a piece of his own flesh along with it. You Jiang's eyelids twitched watching this. He quickly reached out to stop the man's violent act, took out a sharp small knife himself, and helped pry open the mouths of the remaining fish, removing them one by one. The leader, seeing these people meant no harm and had even rescued them, lowered his guard slightly. But he still clutched the animal skin bundle protectively, afraid it would be snatched. Once the fish were removed from his body, he immediately rushed to the unconscious youth's side, finding him also covered in bites and full of water. He quickly dragged the youth over, made him lie prone over his lap, and stuck his fingers down the boy's throat to induce vomiting. Blah! The youth violently vomited a large amount of water, coughing as he did, clearly having choked badly. It took quite a while before he caught his breath, but he still looked extremely weak, his eyes barely fluttering open, showing little reaction. While these two were attending to themselves, the landing craft had reached the others. The crewmen pulled them aboard one by one. Seeing their leader on the boat, who gave them a slight nod, the men in the water climbed onto Yuji's boat with some relief. During the rescue, several more were found to have been bitten by fish and were quickly treated. Those unharmed, following their leader's silent instruction, warily guarded their respective bundles. After everyone was pulled aboard, the 3 giant sailing ships behind had drawn near. Yuji immediately raised the flagpole, sending a signal to the lead ship, then had his men row towards it. The rescued natives on the boat were completely bewildered. They hadn't expected this group to be followed by several even larger, more terrifying monsters, crowded with people. The leader instantly grew tense, gesturing and speaking his native language to Yuji. "Thank you for saving us. Please just drop us off on the opposite bank," he said, pointing towards the east bank of the river, babbling away. Yuji shook his head, pointed at the wounds still seeping blood on the leader's body, and gestured. "Go to our big ship. My uncle has medicine, can treat your wounds." The leader looked down at his own bleeding, burning wounds and hesitated. It was currently the beginning of the first month of autumn, still very hot. If these wounds weren't treated, infection and inflammation could set in, potentially killing him on the other bank. Finally, he reluctantly nodded his agreement. On the lead ship, Yu Fu quickly saw the flag signal from the small boat ahead, sent by his nephew Yuji, requesting permission to rejoin and approach. He also immediately noticed something unusual. The landing craft was packed solid, having gained over a dozen extra people. Fortunately, the oars were still firmly in the hands of his own men. Control of the skiff hadn't been lost. Otherwise, Yu Fu might have thought they'd been hijacked. A huge question immediately popped into Yu Fu's mind. Where on earth did these people come from? After hearing his nephew Yuji's report, Yu Fu nodded in understanding. He walked towards the dumbfounded native leader, giving instructions as he went. Get some clean water for them to wash up, and bring some wound medicine and clean linen strips for bandaging. Yes, sir. A healer from the Snake Clan immediately acknowledged the order and left. Shortly after, he returned carrying a wooden medicine box and began tending to the wounds of the drenched men. The leader was still in shock. Ever since boarding this giant ship, his eyes hadn't stopped darting around. The people on board wore splendid clothing, the ship itself exuded an air of advancement, and there were all sorts of strange contraptions he couldn't name. While he was still curious, a healer knelt beside him with the box. Opening it, he took out a white, long-necked porcelain bottle. Pulling out the wooden stopper released a strong, peculiar smell, reminiscent of some plant. The healer then took out bamboo forceps, picked up a linen strip, dipped it into the blood-red, medicinal liquid in the bottle, and began cleaning the leader's wounds. This liquid was a contribution from the tree tribe back then, said to be the sap of a certain tree with anti-inflammatory properties. Though its effect was limited, it was decent for cleaning wounds. After cleaning, the healer switched to a smaller porcelain bottle, sprinkled some pale yellow medicinal powder, a specialty of the Snake Clan, onto the wounds, and finally wrapped them skillfully with clean linen strips. The leader silently watched all this, not feeling that they intended him harm. Just looking at those delicate little bottles, they didn't seem like containers for poison. It was just that this method of treating injuries was different from what he knew. In his tribe, if someone got hurt, the elders might choose some fresh herbs and apply them directly to the wound. Soon all the rescued men were bandaged, but the ship was still moving forward, and the leader felt anxious. He didn't know what propelled this ship so quickly, nor where they were headed. They needed to disembark immediately and return to the east bank. He scanned the surroundings and saw that everyone seemed to implicitly follow the man named Yu Fu. The young man who had rescued him earlier was also standing beside Yu Fu. He deduced that Yu Fu was the leader of this group. Thus, he walked up to Yu Fu, gesturing while pointing at himself and his tribesmen, then towards the east bank, trying hard to convey, "Friend, thank you for saving my people. But we must leave now. We have to get back to the east bank. Can you take us there? We will give you gifts." Yu Fu glanced in the direction he pointed and nodded. He immediately ordered the fleet to approach the east bank. The crewmen checked the wind vane atop the mast. The helmsman turned the rudder and the sail hands climbed onto the cabin roof, untying ropes and adjusting the massive sails. The crosswind filled the canvas and the crew pulled the ropes taut, constantly adjusting the angle. Soon, the enormous sailboat had turned and was speeding diagonally towards the east bank. The distance of several hundred meters was covered, less than 2 minutes. The group of newly rescued natives watched, utterly dumbfounded. What kind of divine creation was this? So incredible. Not only did it carry many people, but it also moved incredibly fast. And this huge ship actually carried 2 of the smaller boats they had just been in. Keep in mind, that small boat had carried nearly 40 of them earlier and could still move. The leader was once again deeply shaken by the power of Yu Fu's group. By now, the ship was a few dozen meters from the shore. The large ship didn't dock completely. Although the water was deep, it was safer to maintain some distance. "Lower sails, drop anchor, stop the ship," Yu Fu commanded. "We'll rest here for today. Use the small boats to take them ashore." But the leader didn't rush to leave. He watched as the Han tribe members used the small boats to ferry his tribesmen ashore in batches. Only after all his people had safely landed did he walk up to Yu Fu. He untied the animal skin bundle he had kept on his back the whole time and took out a bulging, sealed animal bladder filled with something. "Here, this is our gift, Salt. Thank you for saving my tribesmen and bringing us here," the leader said, handing the bladder to Yu Fu. Yu Fu glanced at it, understanding perfectly. There were several more bladders in the bundle, likely filled with the same thing. As for the salt, he didn't need to taste it to know it was definitely the coarse, yellowish kind, full of impurities, probably just dug out of a salt mine and crushed, completely unprocessed. Yu Fu also instantly understood the leader's cautious thinking. Why did he wait until his tribesmen were ashore before staying behind to offer the gift himself? This fellow was extremely careful, afraid of revealing they carried a large amount of salt, worried that if the Han tribe had ill intentions and decided to rob them while they were all on the ship, they'd be trapped, helpless, and die without knowing how. So he let his tribesmen take most of the salt ashore first, keeping one portion himself as a thank you gift. This way, even if the Han tribe turned hostile, they could at most rob him of his salt and kill him alone. Once his tribesmen were ashore, familiar with the terrain, it would be difficult for the Han tribe to catch them. This man wasn't bad-hearted, knew to repay kindness, considered a good person. But he possessed all the necessary wariness and even dared to stay behind alone to face them, showing considerable courage. No wonder he could lead a salt transport team. He was indeed talented. However, his caution was entirely unnecessary with Yu Fu. Yu Fu smiled, shook his head, indicating he wouldn't accept the gift, then instructed Yu Ji to fetch a return gift. The leader was stunned, unsure what Yu Fu was up to, why he refused his salt. But since he had chosen to stay, he was prepared for the worst, and remained stoic, showing no fear. Shortly after, Yu Ji and another person returned carrying a pile of items, a roll of brown Ramie fabric, a set of ceramic vessels engraved with Han characters, a small bag of snow-white refined salt, and a small wooden box containing blocks of brown sugar. Yu Fu took the bag of white salt, opened it to show the leader, then pointed to the bladder in the leader's hand, gesturing, "We have this stuff too, and ours is much better. No need for yours." He then sealed the salt bag and tucked it into the leader's arms. Next, he picked up the roll of linen, tugged at his own clothes, indicating it was material for making clothes, and also gave it to the leader. Then the box of sugar. He took out a piece, popped it in his mouth, chewed, showing it was tasty, and gave that to the leader too. Finally, he picked up the set of various-sized porcelain pieces and displayed them to the leader. These were too bulky for the leader to carry away easily, but Yu Fu still tried his best, using simple words combined with gestures, wearing an amiable smile, saying, "These, gifts from our tribe, to your tribe. Take them back, give them to your chief. Tell him we can trade. Our ships stay here, wait for you." The leader roughly understood the meaning and nodded repeatedly in excitement. The crewman used a small boat to ferry him and the pile of gifts ashore. The leader scrambled to hold onto the treasures, afraid of dropping or breaking them, then darted into the woods by the riverbank, quickly rejoining his tribesmen who had landed earlier. "Yong, you're back. They didn't do anything to you, did they? Hey, what's this?" An uninjured team member saw the leader return and quickly asked. Moving closer, he saw Yong clutching a large pile of things. "These are gifts from that tribe, just now, for our tribe. They asked me to bring them to the chief," replied the leader, called Yong. Then he asked urgently, "Never mind that for now, how's Chi? Has he woken up?" Him? He's awake," another team member interjected. "He said something bit him in the river, he tried to pull it off, lost his bladder in the process, then more things started biting him, so he just flailed around, thought he was a goner. He was even crying earlier, haha. It's not his fault. He just came of age, first time fetching salt with the team, no experience. It's good he made it back alive," Yang said. "All right, let's hurry. It's getting dark, everyone's exhausted today, and some are injured. We'd best not spend the night out here, let's get home quickly." "Yeah, let's go. Wolves might snatch us if we're late. Everyone walk faster, there'll be hot meat stew waiting back home." Yang led the dozen or so tribesmen, following the markers they'd left on the way, hurrying back towards their settlement. Back on the riverbank, with the Han tribe, Yu Fu had ordered the landing. Being cooped up on the ship all the time wasn't ideal. A dozen men were left to guard the ships while everyone else went ashore and began setting up camp. Yuji stayed close to Yu Fu, asking curiously, "Uncle, do you think they'll come back?" "Definitely," Yu Fu stated confidently. "This is absolutely a large tribe. They can procure salt and carry so much of it, which means they have a significant population. Even if it's not all for their own consumption, they need it for trade with surrounding tribes. Regardless, any tribe that can find its own salt source must be relatively powerful, and the chief of a powerful tribe must be intelligent, capable of learning. Otherwise, they couldn't manage so many people. When they see the white salt, brown sugar, cloth, and ceramics we gave them, these things are like divine creations. To them, technology they dream of possessing. They will definitely want to learn. So, whether they intend to rob us, trick us, or befriend and learn from us, they must come back. If they don't come back, they gain nothing." As Yu Fu analyzed, he was also teaching his nephew, hoping he would amount to something great in the future. Of course, there was a bit of self-interest too, cultivating a successor for his own clan. Yuji thought for a moment, then asked, "So you mean they might attack us? Then isn't landing rather dangerous? Why not wait on the ships?" "Heh." Yu Fu chuckled. "Landing was our own decision. They wouldn't expect it, so they won't attack rashly. From their perspective, even if they brought people to fight, we're on the ships. They can't do much to us. The crew has been cooped up on the boats for days. Going ashore to relax is good too. Wasn't it getting too crowded on board? However, we must still be vigilant. They might send people to watch us secretly from afar. Tell the men, after the camp is set up, send some out to gather firewood nearby and scout the terrain while they're at it. Also, spread the sentry posts further out. Keep a close watch on the surroundings." "Oh, I understand. I'll go arrange it right away." Yu, looking thoughtful, grasped the key points and immediately went off to deploy the sentries. Meanwhile, Yong and his group, after trekking for most of the day, finally returned to their settlement. This place was situated along a tributary of the Great River, not too far from the main channel. Near the bank lay large fields planted with a crop resembling foxtail grass, millet, also known as sumi. At this time, the millet had already formed, ears and flowered, and swarms of bees buzzed busily through the fields, collecting nectar and pollinating. As evening approached, the bees began returning to their hives. They flew in swarms back to the woods beside the settlement. There stood dozens of boxes woven from vines, with many small holes left in the lids, through which the bees entered. An old man with white hair and a white beard, stooped with age, stood beside the beehives. Seeing the bees had all returned, he smiled happily, opened one hive lid, broke off a piece from the comb slab inside, placed it in a reddish-brown double-handled pottery jar, then humming an unknown tune, ambled slowly back, carrying the jar. The bees here were artificially kept by the You Jiang Clan, an ancestral skill passed down through generations. Unknown generations ago, they had also learned to cultivate the grains millet, sumi, and broomcorn millet, shumi, and mastered the technique of firing pottery. Now the tribe had grown considerably, with a population exceeding 2,600. Houses dotted the riverside plain like stars, forming a sizable village. The houses of the You Jiang Clan were uniformly A-frame stilt houses. Wooden posts were driven into the ground in a circle to form the foundation, topped with flooring made by weaving together logs about the thickness of a child's arm, creating a large platform raised a meter off the ground. On this platform, long branches were used to construct a triangular tent-like frame, which was then covered with thick layers of thatch and straw for roofing. It looked like a strange house without walls, just two sloping roofs sitting solidly on wooden stilts. Every household in the entire tribe had this design. However, at the very center of the tribe, there was a circular altar built of stone. But this altar was bare, displaying nothing, and had been that way year-round. As the sun began to set, the women of the You Jiang Clan started preparing the evening meal. They brought out reddish-brown pottery pots, each with 3 built-in legs and 2 handles on top. Placing them directly on the ground, they lit firewood underneath. They poured millet, sumi, water, chunks of meat, and salt into the pot, added a scoop of paste-like animal fat, covered it with a lid, and boiled it vigorously over a high flame. It even saved the need for a stove. This was the staple food of the You Jiang Clan, meat stew. Simple and straightforward. Children ran wildly between the houses, playing and roughhousing. Some held toys. 2 hold pottery ocarinas or flutes, blowing mournfully, using them like whistles. The men squatted nearby, sharpening stone or bone sickles in preparation for next month's autumn harvest. These tools weren't durable. Poor, quality ones would be ruined after a single harvest. So, every year before reaping, several had to be prepared in advance. The chief of the You Jiang Clan, named Xuan, currently stood on a large rock by the river, gazing thoughtfully at his tribe's vast expanse of golden millet fields. He prayed silently that the last month and a half before the harvest would bring favorable weather without any mishaps. Otherwise, winter would be hard to endure. At the same time, he was waiting for the salt trading team to return. Counting the days, barring any accidents, they should be home today. Previous years had always gone smoothly. Just as the sun was about to dip below the horizon in the distance, a dozen figures supporting each other staggered towards the tribe. Xuan was still far away, but he could already hear the welcoming shouts of his tribesmen. His heart tightened and he quickly went to meet them. "Yong, you're back? Was the journey okay? Is everyone back? Is Chi all right?" Xuan hurried forward, worried not only about the safety of the salt team, but especially about his own younger brother Chi, who had just come of age and gone with them this time. That great river was very wide, and crossing it each time was like passing through the gates of hell. If it weren't for the tribe's blasted tradition, that a man must swim across the great river and bring back salt to qualify for marrying the most beautiful woman, he would never have let his own brother take such a risk. However, before Yang, on the other side, could reply, Xuan's gaze swept over the dozen or so people, and he froze on the spot. Several people, led by Yang, were wrapped in white strips of cloth, with faint bloodstains seeping through. Yung was badly injured on his arms and legs, and another person similarly wrapped was none other than his brother Qi. He looked even more seriously injured than Yang. "You're injured? How did this happen? These wounds, who treated them?" Xuan asked, both shocked and anxious. "Chief, can we have some hot water first? Stew would be even better. We're starving." Yang's voice was heavy with exhaustion. Oh, right, quick, sit down. Go sit over by the altar." Xuan snapped back to reality and quickly called. To his tribesmen, "Someone, quick, get them some hot water. The stew isn't ready yet, don't rush, it'll be ready soon." While making arrangements, he led Yang and the others to an open space beside the altar. This area usually served as a small square for tribal ceremonies, not very large. Soon, several bonfires were lit in the square, illuminating the surroundings. Xuan, Yang, Qi, and a few other team members sat around a large tree stump. The bladders of salt the dozen men had carried back, along with the gifts from Yu Fu, were piled on the stump. Xuan picked up the exquisite porcelain bowl, examining it carefully in the firelight. "So that tribe wants to trade with us?" Probably." Yang began recounting the day's harrowing experience. "They saved us. I originally wanted to give them some salt as thanks, but their leader refused and gave me these things instead, saying we could exchange goods and they would wait for us by the river. And this?" Xuan put down the porcelain bowl and picked up the roll of linen, asking curiously, "This looks like the stuff you use to bandage your wounds? How is it made? So tightly woven?" "It's what they use to make clothes." Yang recalled what he'd seen on the ship. There were hundreds of them, all wearing clothes made of this material. The men tie their hair up on top of their heads, and some who looked important even had ornaments in their hair. "What else? Anything else special?" Xuan grew increasingly interested in the mysterious tribe. Lots of things, I can't really describe them. But they're things. They're all things we've never seen before." "Then take your time, don't rush, just say whatever comes to mind." Xuan gestured to someone nearby. "Someone, bring the meat stew over. Everyone eat while we talk. Right, use this bowl for mine." He handed over the porcelain bowl he was holding. Today he would indulge himself and eat with this beautiful thing. Let me think. Yang took a sip of hot stew, steadying himself. "Right, they're boats, all made of wood. The small kind can hold 40 people. They use long-handled wooden boards to paddle and can even reach the shore. The big kind can hold over 100 people, and they can even put the small boats onto the big ones. I don't know what makes the big boats move. I didn't see them paddling with boards, they just pulled some ropes a few times, and the boat moved forward on its own, and could even turn." Yong grew more excited as he spoke, and the surrounding people listened intently, as if hearing a fantastic tale, even forgetting the stew in their hands. Right, another injured team member chimed in. "When we were pulled onto the boat, they used something like a bone knife to pry the fish mouths open. That knife was really sharp and shiny too. Don't know what it's made of, but a light cut could slice through fish skin." "Things made of wood can float on water?" Xuan frowned, his face full of doubt. Not that he suspected Yang of lying, but his understanding of the world was being challenged. He couldn't imagine what such a thing looked like. "That thing is like a big house. Yes, a big wooden house that can float on water and move by itself." Xuan's brother Qi, having recovered somewhat, joined the discussion. He held up the small wooden box containing brown sugar, presenting it like a treasure to his brother. "Brother, look, this is also made of wood. Isn't it beautiful?" Xuan had noticed the small square box earlier, initially thinking it was just a block of wood and ignoring it. Hearing Qi mention it now, he picked it up and shook it. Something rolled around inside. "Is this empty? What's inside? How do you open it?" Xuan asked curiously. "It's food." Yang nearby helped open the box, revealing reddish-brown blocks inside. Their leader even ate a piece in front of us. Juan picked up a block of brown sugar, holding it up to the firelight. Reddish-brown and semi-transparent like a gemstone. Held against the sun during the day, it would surely be even more beautiful. He really couldn't associate this thing with food. However, he glanced again at the bag of snow-white salt nearby. Perhaps the people of that tribe just liked to make their food fancy? Such a waste of effort. While mentally complaining that the Han tribe might have OCD, Juan popped the brown sugar block into his mouth. A rich, sweet plant fragrance immediately filled his mouth, accompanied by a faint caramel aroma. Seems like it's roasted from some plant, he instantly judged. This stuff is very sweet as our honey. But the taste is different. You guys try some too, Juan urged the others. Hearing this, Chi's eyes lit up. He quickly grabbed a piece too, popped it in his mouth, savoring the unique sweetness, and exclaimed, "This is much tastier than our honey. Indeed, the grass is always greener on the other side. Other people's things always seem better." Juan ignored his foolish brother and continued discussing with the others. "This tribe has salt, cleaner than ours. They have dry honey, easy to store and carry. Their pottery is much prettier than ours, so thin, colorful, with pictures and symbols on it. And this material for clothes. If we had this for clothes, couldn't we wear it all year except winter? No more making do with grass skirts. This tribe is very powerful." Having seen these gifts, Xuan concluded, "So, Chief, what do you mean? Should we trade with them?" Yang asked while sipping his stew. "If we trade, what do we trade for? What do we use? They seem not to lack anything, and we don't really have anything valuable to offer." "Who says we don't?" Xuan immediately retorted. "We have honey and millet and broomcorn millet. We can teach them how to grow grain. Who said we have to trade things?" He couldn't let Yang speak so poorly of his own tribe. They were a large tribe of over 2,000 people after all. However, thinking carefully, it seemed they really didn't have anything particularly impressive to offer. The You Jiang Clan excelled at pottery, but the other tribe's pottery was prettier. They had salt, but the other tribe's salt was better. They only had animal skins and grass for clothes, while the others had proper fabric. They had honey. The others had convenient sugar blocks. Racking his brain, it seemed only their tribe's grain and cultivation techniques might be something the others lacked. At least Yang hadn't heard or seen the Han tribe produce grain. If they truly didn't have it, then this technology would be valuable. Such an important thing couldn't be sold cheap. They had to get something good back in return. That was Zhuan's thought, and Yang also found it reasonable. Trading the tribe's most important technology should at least fetch back a skill of equal value to avoid loss. "Chief," Yang asked, "so we teach them to grow millet. What do we ask from them? If we don't get an equally important skill back, we'll suffer a huge loss. Trade for skills. Why trade for skills?" Xuan glanced faintly at Yang, thinking this fellow's brain wasn't working right. "You'd be satisfied with just one? That's the only valuable thing our tribe has to offer. If we don't ask for more, where will we find such a good opportunity next time? Then what do we ask for?" Yang was even more confused. "Just with this grain-growing skill, we can't exchange for much, can we? If we ask for too much, will they agree?" "That's why I said you're foolish." Xuan looked contemptuously at Yang. "What are skills? Can you see or touch them? Don't they have to be taught by people? Since that's the case, can't we just trade for a few of their people? As long as we find a way to trade for a few people, why worry about not learning skills? Once they join our tribe, won't they have to use whatever skills they have? We can just learn from them then. Isn't that much better than trading for just one skill?" Hearing the chief's stroke of genius, Yang's eyes instantly widened, and he slapped his thigh excitedly. "Exactly. Skills, you can't see or touch them, aren't they all attached to people? Find a way to trade for a few people, and won't all their skills become ours? Truly worthy of being the chief of our You Jiang Clan. So clever. How does his brain work?" Yang was ecstatic, looking at his chief with eyes full of admiration. No wonder Xuan could be chief. His brain just worked better. Then let's go tomorrow, Yang immediately suggested, wishing he could leave right now. If we wait too long, they might leave. We won't be able to find them then. What's the rush? Xuan waved his hand. They definitely won't leave so quickly. We'll set out early tomorrow morning. Bring more people, bring some honey as a return gift, and also to thank them for saving you today. Then, we'll invite some of their people to come stay in our tribe. For a few days. Treat them well then. Maybe when they see our tribe has so much grain, knows how to farm, and has a stable food source, they won't want to leave on their own. Xuan began planning. But what if they don't want to stay? Yang was still a bit worried. Chief, how do you plan to trade for people with them? Marriage exchange, Xuan said confidently. Isn't that perfectly normal?